Namaste and welcome everyone. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America or VHPA. And I'm Ajay Shah. I'm the president of VHPA. And with me is Sudha Jagannath. Sudha is a Hindu advocate, Hindu activist, and has been really articulate on all the issues that relate to American Hindus. Sudha, we have an exciting program today because, as you know, this week has been really a remarkable week for all the Hindus in America. If you look at it from purely from the Hindu perspective, we had two things that happened this week. One was that former President Trump announced his running mate, and running mate was JD Vance, and JD Vance's wife Usha Vance is of Hindu heritage. She was brought up Hindu. She is still a practicing Hindu, and she credits a lot of her achievements, a lot of her life experiences to her Hindu heritage. And just today, just when we were going to start our show, and we were going to put together, we were just putting together the slides, and there came an announcement that President Biden has decided to step aside, and he is recommending that Kamala Harris, uh, who's Vice President of America, would be supporting her. So now we have Kamala Harris, whose mother was a practicing Hindu, and so now we have two people who have some Hindu background, who are going to be at a position where they can make an impact in America. So, with that, Sudha, welcome. And I'll give you an opportunity to just say a couple of words, and then we'll bring in three very, very interesting guests. So, today we do this as a show between two of us talking, but today we have three very, very exciting, important guests who are going to talk about who are plugged into either Democratic Party or Republican Party, and they're going to bring their perspective to the conversation. So, Sudha, over to you.
Namaste, everybody. Exciting day, exciting topic. America is the greatest democracy in the world. I would say longest lasting democracy in the world too. And to see an immigrant community, of course, the candidates are not immigrants; they are second generation. But Kamala Harris, being endorsed by President Biden, who is exited from the campaign. And on the Republican side, the VP choice and his wife being of Hindu American heritage. And she credits her parents who came as immigrants uh, and their strong faith as Hindus, which made them very good people. So I think all of the things we have been hearing is wonderful. And particularly, I'm very pleased to have three Hindu women on our show today
Yes,
to speak
indeed.
about what it means to be a Hindu American.
Yes, especially, I mean, three. I mean, both of them are Hindu women, and that really says a lot about how our community has, come a long way, not just in terms of gaining prominence in America, but also in many ways in terms of gender parity and equality. So let me bring Srilekha Pale first on the screen. Srilekha, welcome. So Srilekha is a healthcare executive from the Washington D.C. area. She is a Republican, and she has been on this show before. And she was appointed by has been appointed rather by Governor Youngkin on two boards: Virginia Asian Advisory Board and Board of Physical Therapy, and the Virginia Asian Advisory Board. She is also the chair of the Virginia Asian Advisory Board and advises the governor on ways to improve economic and cultural links between the Commonwealth and the Asian nations, with a focus on the areas of commerce and trade, art and education, and general government, as well as the issues that affect the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Welcome, Shilekha.
Namaste.
I also want to welcome Falguni Pandya. Falguni Ben, welcome Falguni ji. Falguni Pandya is again, and I must say that all of the people who are here today are representing themselves. They're not official. We have done in past. We have done programs where we actually reached out to Republican National Committee, Democratic National Committee, and invited official representatives. But today we didn't have time, so I'm grateful to people who are here, but they're representing themselves as unless they say otherwise. Falguni Pandya is on the New Jersey India Commission appointed by Governor Murphy. She's also on the Asian American and Pacific Islander Commission, appointed again by Governor Murphy's administration. She is the co-chair of NJDEM, a Hindu caucus. She is on the Hindu Jewish Coalition Executive Board. And Hindu Jewish Coalition is the initiative of American Jewish Coalition, and also founder and chairperson of Namaste Global. And we have pleasure of knowing Falguni Ben for a very long time. Uh, Also, uh, let me welcome, uh, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, is Lakshmi Vadalamudi. Um, and Lakshmi ji, welcome. She is active with the Hindu American and Indian American communities and with the grassroots organizations, including the FEMS for Democracy, Hindu Community Relations Council, and Foundation for India and Indian Diaspora Studies. So I'm assuming that's FIDS, right?
Yes.
We have good relations with FIDS. So I'm glad to have
Yeah,
someone
I
from FIDS here.
apologize for my connection.
Yeah, well, we go very back way long. So with FIDS, so I'm glad to have you here. So let me turn over to Sudha. Sudha, you want to uh, start?
Yeah, of course. And first of all, welcome to all three of you. And I'm so glad for the girl power here. Okay. And I think we are talking about a subject that also brings the girl power back into the conversation. Um, America has never had a female president, right? We have had a vice president, but never a president. So today's announcement by President Biden, where he said he was exiting the campaign and he was endorsing Kamala Harris. So I just wanted to post it to I or any of you. But first, let me go with Fal. What do you think of that particular announcement and Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket? And as Hindu American, what does it? What do you feel about it?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, having us on this forum, and providing this service for the viewers and larger diaspora. You guys are doing excellent work, and thank you for this dialogue. I'm very happy to be here. And Ajayji, thank you for clarifying that we all are representing ourselves here and we are not um, sharing the opinion of the organizations that we work for or we work with. So these are exciting times. I give hats off to President Biden and the Democratic Party for pushing a woman forward. The first vice president of America came from Democratic Party, and there are a lot of there's a lot to celebrate here. I have had an opportunity to briefly interact with Vice President Harris some time back, and I have to tell you that there is something about her. I've seen her work, and I'm very impressed. But more, let's focus on Hindu American perspective. I do think that either side of the aisle, Hindu women, Hindu people will reflect their values of inclusivity, considering the world as one family, and being accepting and being very comfortable with diversity. So I have no doubt with that Miss Harris will actually represent what is the best of India and what is the best of Hindu thought.
How about you, Lakshmi? And then I will go to Sri Lekha. Lakshmi, what do you think of a woman at the top of the ticket and a Hindu American heritage that she has?
I'm extremely excited about this. I've been I happened to have the TV on where I heard the breaking news, and I've been busy on WhatsApp with my various groups. Supremely excited about what's been going on. I had the pleasure of meeting the vice president once during the debates in Detroit in 2019, and I met with her husband actually. When he came into town, when she was still in the running for the presidential uh, uh, race, and we were so excited in that room. There were, I think, 3 or 4 other Indian women in the room. It was a very small gathering, but when Doug Emhoff was talking about, all the firsts that she had achieved. He kept saying she was the first Black woman this and the first Black woman that, and all of us were like, and the first Indian American, because she was the first Indian American, to be elected Attorney General and all these other wonderful firsts. But I was a little concerned because I was like, why aren't she mentioning that she's also Indian American? And to us, this is amazing for us, for those of us who grew up here, for those of us who, are have come here and are raising children here as well. It is amazing to see somebody from our background, in a position like that, because that shows us truly that we can achieve all these things. I was personally, I remember telling my mom about it. She was very excited when she learned that Kamala Harris was Indian and South Indian and also Hindu. She's like, I listened to the name and I thought that, yeah, she seemed very Indian, and she was very, very excited after seeing her perform, because she didn't know until then. And I remember showing them the video that she had done with Mindy Kaling, where they were cooking or attempting to cook masala dosa. My mother was very, confident that she's like, those girls, I could teach them both how to cook, because they don't know. But they're both extremely, I think our entire community is extremely, extremely excited about this. I know the Democrats are, I know the Indian ladies in Michigan definitely are, and we cannot wait to vote for her. And we'd like to, get to know her a little bit more. I know in the past week, we've been hearing a lot about Usha Chilakaludi. I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but
Usha Vance.
about that
Usha Vance.
family. And
Yeah.
we're going to be in the spotlight. Our community and our culture and our religion and all this stuff is going to be in the spotlight. We've seen a lot of negative stuff. I'm hoping that we will see some positive aspects of our culture and our religion also explicated and supported by both sides here.
Thank you. And so let's come to Sri Lanka. I want to talk to you about not only Kamala Harris on the Democratic side, but we had Nikki Haley, a woman of Indian origin, who ran in the race, and now we also have the ex-president Trump's VP, JD Vance, his wife. Usha Vance, who's avowed Hindu, practicing Hindu. So, what do you think about all of this on the Hindu American population? And what do you think the impact of these women are going to be in American politics?
Thank you for posing a very important questions at the right time. As the young lady said, keeping my policies and politics aside, I'll just really focus on Hindu-ness about these young ladies, right? As a Hindu American, one thing that I've noticed is it's hard enough, I think, knowing the work-life balance for women and so on and so forth. It's hard enough to push from one layer to another layer. So it's always, I feel very proud of any females for that matter in this entire global world doing well. So having my Hindu sisters, or Indian American sisters, or South Asian sisters, whatever we want to embrace, however far we want to go, it's always a proud moment to see that. But other than going beyond the superficialness of she makes great dosa, she connects with me, I shook hands, she seems to relate very well with us. I want to really stick to the roots of the values. If you see, Kamala Harris has also always gone back and said how much her grandfather influenced her, her grandfather's nonviolence movement along with Mahatma Gandhi. I think that resonates well with me when we are talking about Kamala Harris, even though I don't agree with her policies whatsoever. When it comes to J.D. Vance's wife, if you notice her when she went on to convention, she mentioned more than a couple of times about her Indian American parents, about immigrant background, how sound her values were, very different from regular American values. I think that's a proud moment for me. If I really remove the superficialness, that gives me hope that our Hindu values are the real values, right? Sanatan Dharma values are the real values. And anybody that kind of thinks that they want to really get globalized, I always say, go back to your roots. The Hindu values and Sanatan Dharma values have always proved over and over again the richness of our culture. And I think our kids will take a last. And the last point I do want to mention about Nikki Haley and all of that, it reflects Americanism for me more than anything. America is a land of opportunities. It gives any opportunity for anyone that wants to truly succeed. And with having that strong Hindu Dharma principles, there is a very good reason why we are really pushing forward, because America is a land of opportunities for all. The reason we are pushing forward is the Sanatan Dharma values. And I want to really tell your audience that that's the values you need to stick to. That's the values you need to tell your children and grandchildren.
Really well put. So let me take from that and maybe start this time with Falguni. What do you think that? And I'll specifically ask about Kamala Harris to both you and Lakshmi. What do you think that Kamala Harris learned from her mom or her grandfather uh, uh, about the Hindu dharma that is relevant to the way, if she's nominated and elected as the president, how will it impact her thinking because of this, Hindu heritage that she has?
So, like Sri Lakha said, that she has been greatly influenced by her grandfather. She used to go on walks with her grandfather when she was there in India, and she has learned a lot about the movement of Mahatma Gandhi, which represents uh, the true essence of our dharma, non-violence. Even Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. King was also very much impacted by the same philosophy. So, when you have grandparents and parents instilling the values of abandoning violence and embracing non-violence values, I think that somehow does shape who you are. It does shape how you relate to others. And then there are a lot of other things from Hindu perspective where we consider women as divine and women are powerful. I think that's a very important concept and which is very unique to Hinduism because we have goddess culture. And when you are a woman raised in the goddess culture, you can feel nothing but all powerful and confident and very strong in your identity. I think both the women, Usha Vance and Vice President Harris, would carry that with them, that level of confidence. And I do believe, and I'm repeating myself, that we have the Sanatan Dharma concept that I always clings onto. And that concept, Namaste Global, my organization, is also founded upon, is Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is one family. And when you are at the helm of the greatest nation in the world and the most powerful nation in the world, our great country, America, and if you come with that concept of Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism, that the world is one family, we all are connected somehow, the decision we make will be less divisive and it will be more unifying. And I am sincerely looking forward to watching that unfold. And throughout the world, we have seen Rishi Sunak in England and so many other places where uh, people who are rooted in our ancient wisdom that gave yoga and wisdom that gave meditation and wisdom that actually connected the whole world and brought it up in spirituality and oneness, universal oneness. I do believe that Vice President Harris will exhibit those concepts at subconscious level and manifest it into her action.
Okay. Lakshmi?
I think that's a wonderful point that you made about the importance of the Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and also the power of Shakti is. I remember hearing about her speak about her grandfather, and this is, I think that something a lot of Western countries don't really know about our culture. And about Sanatana Dharma because they have been, subject to propaganda for so many centuries about how Indian women or Hindu women are oppressed and they're somehow knuckled under and whatever. And this is not the reality of what our culture and our religion teaches about women's place in society. And I believe that Kamala Harris embodies this. And I believe also Usha seems to have learned this from her parents as well, is that women are just as capable as men and are just as powerful creatures as men, and they have the right and the ability to make their own decisions when it comes to their own bodies, when it comes to functioning in society, leading society, when it comes to education, when it comes to all of these fields. That is how Usha became a lawyer. That is how Kamala Harris became a lawyer and became an attorney general and an excellent prosecutor. These are women whose background have made them strong. The power of Shakti, I think, is going to manifest itself very much, especially in this particular race with all of these concerns about reproductive rights and all these other things that are coming up. And again, just to emphasize just how important your Falguni ji's point about Vasudeva Kutumbakam. That is, we are living in a much more of a globalized society, in a globalized world where everything we do is dependent upon how well we relate to everybody else on this earth and how we work together in order to make progress as a species in general. And I think that the background, it's already ingrained within these women, how important that is. And I think that the Hindu values, the Sanatana Dharma values, are how they will do this, because they are not pitting against one another. They're not thinking, my religion or my whatever is superior to yours and I need to, have you knuckle down. This is just not the way that we are taught to think by our mothers at home. And I think this is incredibly important. And I think it's going to, make a huge difference in the way that this country is going to be led.
Thank you. And Shilaka?
Yeah, I'm going to build off on all the wonderful points my fellow ladies made. But I also will kind of take you back to Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words. I think Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, you often see her quoting some of Dr. King's. And going off what the lady says, as women, and especially as Hindu women, we are consensus builders. We are not divisive people. And our culture has taught that, regardless of whether we pray for Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga Ma, every one of those accentuates one quality that is superly necessary in order for us to live a better life and also make the life better for everyone. I think with all the racial history Americans has thus far, it has been a turmoil. We all have to agree. Not only this past few years, but for the decades, the racial battles have been in a turmoil. And it's always nice to see Hindu women pick that up and be consensus builders. I am sincerely hoping that these two ladies, which I have no doubt with all the rituals and spiritual practices that Falguni mentioned about yoga, meditation, what that teaches is being mindful. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, what Narendra Modi always talks about is treat global as your own self, right? So with all those characteristics and instincts that we have and being females as consensus builders, I am sincerely hoping that they'll focus on removing this racial pitting fights between race and each race. So I think that's what I think these Hindu women will bring in, that no other women will even think of bringing in. Bring that consensus, bring that positiveness, reduce the divisiveness between the races, and let's kind of work together and let's be inclusive is I think what they will bring to the plate.
The one question I want to ask is, we always talk about the American dream, right? The American dream and American exceptionalism. These are two things I kind of feel like uh, separate, I mean, hold us, above the fray, I would say. So what do you think? How do you think the Hindu value, maybe in any of these candidates we are talking about? Of course, Kamala Harris is a practicing Baptist, but she has her mother's Hindu heritage. And Usha Vance is a practicing Hindu, married to a man who, with her help, baptized to be a Catholic. I think that shows the true Vasudeva Kutumbakam value. But what do you think these women's influence will be in shaping the American dream, let's say for the Hindu American community? Maybe to start there. Sri Lanka, maybe we start with you.
Sure, Sudhaji. I think you said it very well in your own question, saying that women are, I always say, power makers, right? Power brokers is what I say. And I'm saying it in a very positive manner, and there is no negative connotation to it. I think going to your question of how are this going to influence, I think they'll have a lot of influence on policies. I think there is a concern within Republican Party that Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance will soften up on immigration. But because of having Usha Chilikaluri as part of, because of his wife's beliefs. But I don't think so. I think Usha's take will be on it, saying that legal immigration is the way to go, which is major issue for Indian Americans and Hindu Americans as well, because we want to make sure our kids are safe, our neighborhoods are safe. Safety is our number one priority. That's American dream. Most people come to American dream to protect ourselves from political persecution. Although a lot of Hindu Americans came in for better life and better prosperity, equal opportunities for all. I don't believe any one of us came here for political asylum. But there are some countries that come in. So even though Republican Party, I disagree. I tell them I think in fact Usha's influence will influence him to come up with a humanistic immigration policy versus a detrimental policy for generations to come. And humanistic immigration policy is so much needed, which is legal immigration policy. So our Hindu Americans or Indian Americans are not sitting there and waiting for 70 years when everyone else can come in and just get their visas off the line, right? I think her heritage will influence it to be a lot more humanistic. I think that's a major issue. But everything else, I think going back to Kamala Harris, she celebrated Diwali at her home. And I jokingly even said, as soon as Usha came in, I said, we are going to have Ugadi now. If you know, she's from Telugu origin. So I said, all right, next year, ladies, be ready for Ugadi and Diwali, right? What that tells is that we portray our culture. And if you think about the reason we celebrate is Diwali is to bring light in dark, right? I think that's more than we are celebrating Diwali. I think we'll spread the theme of what Diwali means to the mainstream public, which is necessary for our daughters who goes to college and they don't think these girls are weird. They just wear some gagra and just dance around and do bhangra, right? So they look at it as like, oh, is this the reason? So I think these are all the qualities when you have women in power, because they take the time to communicate, collaborate, explicitly discuss things versus brushing them off or taking it and putting it under the rug. That's what I'm excited about.
Wonderful. How about you, Fal? What do you think about American Dream and the influence of these great ladies coming into office?
So let's honor the democracies of the world. India is the largest democracy in the world, where these two ladies have exposure to where they've come from, their parents have come from. And America is the greatest democracy in the world and the oldest democracy in the world. So when you come from democratic upbringing, you naturally expect and give other people freedom. So that thought process is core to our American dream and American exceptionalism. And that is what India and India's democracy, despite of having 1.4 billion people, is thriving, is tremendous, and is robust. So when you come from that large country and seeing democracy successfully being executed, you have that expectation, you have that hope, you know how to work in the democratic environment, and your parents also, your background, everything goes towards the democratic values of America. We see in the corporate sector so many leaders of the Fortune 500 companies are Indian and Hindus. And why is that? It's that because there is work ethics, there is fairness, there is not me first, but there is us versus just me, and there is lack of us versus them. And if you see on this forum, all of us, the other two fellow panelists with me, Lakshmi ji and Srilekha ji, Lakshmi ji and I are Democrats, Srilekha ji is Republican. Yet, when you listen to each other, what do you think? We are all on the same page. We are celebrating what is positive, and we are finding things to celebrate and cherish. So that's who we are. And we are doing that because we are Hindus. We are not getting into Republican versus Democrat. We are celebrating what must be celebrated. We are standing up for the values that we must stand up for. And the fairness is in our bone, so in our DNA. So I do think that there is a lot to hope for. And America, my country, America, will be better off if there is some of that whole inclusivity perspective, the fairness perspective, and equality perspective, the freedom perspective is strengthened even more.
Wonderful. How about you, Lakshmi?
I agree with everything that both of these other ladies have said, but also, um, the American dream, I think, was founded, just the idea of this country was founded on a a notion of pluralism that they do not call pluralism because it was, mostly white Christian men and white Christians who had founded this country. But, they brought together people from all over the world. And frankly, America works because of this pluralism. And that pluralism is something that is absolutely inherent to us as Indians and as Hindus, as people who practice Sanatana Dharma. We thrive on working together with people who think a little differently. They don't have to be exact carbon copies of us. I think it's this ability to think independently, to respect the beliefs of others, and to listen to each other. I think this is why we survive here. It's not, the work ethic is wonderful. The value and the importance that we place on things like education, on family, on children, and all these other values of working together to create a functional society. I think that is inherently part of Sanatana Dharma, and I think those are things that that Kamala Harris will brings, and I believe, I hope that Usha has as much um, import and influence on her husband and upon the party, because they really, really, I think both parties really need all of that to listen to each other so that we can all work together. This, as Sulika ji mentioned, it's this the consensus building. I think that is how you create a society that is functional, that is able to deal with all the problems that we have been facing as a world, as as a species in general. But I think having America be led by these values, by people who have understood these values in a sort of like a bone deep DNA deep way for that goes back for thousands and thousands of years. This is something America is still kind of learning, and I think that having someone at the helm or in the White House or near the locus of power would be an immensely wonderful thing for us as Americans here, especially as Indian Americans, as Hindu Americans as well.
All
So,
right.
Sudha, I want to interject if you don't mind. This is, uh, I've been in last couple of weeks. I've been doing a little bit of research on democracy in India. I've done it in past, but I kind of refreshing, and in last 2 3 weeks, I dove a little bit deeper into this, and taking off of what our other esteemed guests have said. The roots of democracy in India go back thousands, literally thousands of years, and there are the republics in India which were called the Mahajanapadas are mentioned in various stupas. They're mentioned in our religious books, Vedas onwards. The republic form republic.
Ajay, we cannot hear you.
We cannot hear you.
Ah. No, actually, while he's fixing his audio, Ajay makes a great point. A democracy in India. I give talks on women of India, and I have to say, I usually give to an audience of Indian women in America. They don't know that Indian women got the right to vote without a century of hard work, right? At the same time, the men got it during the right around the independence of India. Women got the same rights. We never had the suffrage movement. And most Indian women don't understand that. Most of the world do not understand that. Are you back, Ajay? Oh, you still mute. Yeah. Yeah, and so we have to remember this. We have to also talk to our children about it, about democracy and the great heritage they have inherited. Even though they always consider, our kids always think of themselves as Americans, which they are. But at some point, I think they need to celebrate the Indian Hindu part of the American side. I think it helps them. Are you back, Ajay? Yeah, not sure exactly what that is.
I
Yeah,
have heard
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Fal.
I have heard one child of immigrant parents, I forgot which country he was from, but he said that by birth, I am American, and by blood, I am of that country. And I just thought it was such a beautiful way to describe it. And by blood, I will always be Bhartiya, not even Indian. Let's go back, Bhartiya. Where do our ancestors come from?
Yeah, yeah. Very, very important point. I hope we are all talking to our children, and at some point, I want to know what, if any, your the youngsters in your house have to say about American politics right at this moment. Srileka, maybe let me ask you that question. I don't know if you have young kids.
No, I actually, I mean, I
Yeah,
just
can
have
you
a
hear me
kid
now?
that graduated from college and is in high school. So one thing that I've always told, I quote Ronald Reagan's statements all the time, either on my social media with my kids. But where in this situation, I do want to tell one statement that President Reagan mentioned about democracy. He said, democracy is not a fragile flower. It needs a constant cultivating. If the rest of the century is to witness the gradual growth of freedom and democratic ideals, we must take actions to assist in the campaign for democracy. I think since you give so many talks for other women, I think this is something you should absolutely emphasize. I emphasize to my kids saying that democracy can be lost in generation, in just your generation, if it's not cultivated. That directly comes from President Reagan's library. So I say that to my kids, and I thought I'll take the opportunity to tell your audience that.
So,
That's
can you guys
that
hear
is
me
such an
now?
awesome quote.
Yes, Ajay, go ahead.
Okay.
Complete what
Perfect.
you had
Yeah.
started.
So what I was saying was that some of the research that I've done in the last few weeks, the Mahajanapadas existed in India for thousands of years. These are republic form of government, always existed in India since the most ancient days. Not only that, but you'd be actually surprised to know that there was actually an act. There was an act of voting. So they would have debate and consensus building in a parliament kind of setting, and if the debate and discussions and consensus didn't lead to a decision, then they would actually have voting, and they would have the voting that was done. We use this, we used to use paper ballots, and now we use electronic ballots. But in India, in past, they used to use this different colors tickets or stones, which considered were like made of stones, and they were called salakas. Okay, and the salakas, they would take the salakas and they would put it in a pot, and it was the process of voting was called salaka grahana. So
Mm.
they would collect the votes, and then there was an election officer called salaka grahaka or salaka grahaka, who would actually go and count. He was a neutral person who would then count the votes. So this is the heritage that we bring to America as Hindus, that for thousands of years we have actually practiced this kind of electoral democracy. If you remember, there was a few months ago, there was this big, news about Uthiramerur in Tamil Nadu. It's a temple, and on the walls of the temple, which date the writings that date back to 795 to 846 Common Era, where they have entire elaborate democratic process laid out as to how the committees would be formed, how the votes would be collected, how the candidates would run for the office. All of that in great detail is all laid out. So we truly bring the democratic heritage to America. It's not to say that there was no democracy during the days of Greeks and Romans and all that. Western civilization also had democracy, but we bring a unique perspective to democracy as Hindus to America. So I just, because the discussion went there, I just thought I'll bring that up. This was part of one of the future shows, so we'll still probably do that show. But I do have one question, and that is a little bit more a challenging question for you guys, and that is, how does your party perceive a candidate from a background that is not a Judeo-Christian background? It is a very different background, right? So, what is the perception that you see in your party? Is your party accepting of this candidate that brings a different perspective? Let me start with Shileka.
Ajay, I think wonderful question and a worthwhile question, especially at this time, right? It's coming from Republican Party. I know people really try to accuse Republicans of saying that they are not inclusive. And there is definitely the fringe minority. Don't get me wrong. I tell this audience too, there are fringe minorities everywhere you go to Bharat, you come to America. But leaving the fringe minority, I must admit, I mean, if you talk to true Republicans, the so-called deplorables, the so-called hillbillies, and all of those, they're actually very inclusive. You can speak to any Hindu American candidate that has run, that has been in the field. As long as I've been, I ran for an election. I've been in the field of Republican Party and the Hindu Americans. The common people are superbly inclusive. Yes, we all start off our speech by saying the Judeo-Christian values, Jesus Christ prayer. There is a lot of amens going on, but at the end of the day, we end by saying, God bless United States, right? Race or creed or class. This is a land of opportunities. I think regular Americans, including Republican Americans, I want to assure the audience, believe that democracy exists with inclusiveness, regardless of class, creed, race, caste, no matter what. And they're very accepting. They have been always accepting of me, and I've played major role. I was the vice chair of 11th congressional district, the congressional district that I live in. I was Fairfax GOP's vice chair of outreach for years. Very, very accepting. RPV, which is Republican Party of Virginia. I mean, think about how many people ran for presidential elections, right? Nikki Haley ran, Vivek Ramaswamy ran, and I can start uttering. I mean, we had a Sikh leader who actually ran as an RNC chair, and she got tremendous encouragement from many. She couldn't make it because of lack of delegations. Even though there is that fringe minority, I want to assure the public that Republicans in itself are very open to this idea. And I think it's only getting better. It's definitely not going back. We are only getting better. So I am very positive and optimistic.
Okay, let me go to Lakshmi. Lakshmi ji.
I think our party is very, very inclusive when it comes to religious differences. And I think that they have a pretty strong appreciation for the Hindu perspective and the fact that Hindus are here. They don't know very much about us, which I learned recently, but they are incredibly interested in learning more about like what exactly it is we do beyond the yoga and the chai and all of that. They love the Bollywood, they love all the the trimmings and the trappings of in Hindu culture. They don't know very much about it, but they are very, very eager to learn. I think in general that they are like much more accepting. They are not so tied to the whole Judeo-Christian thing. There are French people, I think, on both sides. I think that within the Democratic perspective, it's like it's such a large tent that if they are there, they're not given quite as much space or air as they are a little bit more in the Republican side. I think there few of those voices tend to come out a little bit more, which I saw, when it came to, with the response to Nikki Haley, I saw some rather offensive things with regard to Usha and their son Vivek specifically, and Vivek Ramaswamy as well. But I also saw similar stuff coming from the Democratic side, unfortunately, when it came to attacking Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley. And I was in there, in the trenches, basically saying, this is, you can't be talking like that. If you value the values that you claim to value, you cannot be attacking someone based on their ethnicity, the ethnicity of their parents, whatever it is they're calling themselves, about their religion and all that stuff. And there were people who did not take that well, and there were people who were actually very open to learning about what their misconceptions were, because there's been a lot of propaganda and a lot of misinformation about India itself, about Hindus, about our culture and all of that. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag, and I think we have a lot of work to do. I think as a community, I think we are just getting involved in the political realm within like the past, I don't know, the past at least a few years. We've had,
Yeah.
we've been electing more Indian Americans and more Hindu Americans who are proud Hindu Americans into our legislatures. In Michigan, we recently had Padma Gupta, who was the first Indian immigrant in the Michigan legislature. She did a lot of educating, not only at the local level but at the state level as well. It's I think, you know, because we are present here, we are present in both parties. We are present very much in the society as well. That we kind of have to do a little bit more in order to introduce ourselves to our neighbors.
Yeah.
If that makes
Very
sense.
well put. Falguni?
I am going to pick up from where Lakshmi ji left off, that the onus is on us. We need to vote. I would like to tell everybody we need to vote. We need to know of the issues that are going on. We need to worry about political or just representation. All right now, our community is mostly worried about getting their children educated, putting them into good school, working hard, paying your taxes, becoming this minority that always contributes in the growth of the town they are in, or to the economy, to the neighborhood. But we never and a good thing about us is that we are not an entitled community, right? We work hard, we are not entitled community. But on the flip side is we also don't stand up enough for ourselves. And whenever the negative information comes, we are not equipped to rebuttal it enough. But like Lakshmi ji said, and I'm sure Sri ji would agree, that we are getting there. We are slowly and slowly getting there. Democratic Party celebrates diversity, very inclusive party. I have gotten such a great welcome. I work at the intersection of faith and politics. I'm a Hindu clergy in my town, and I get invited as a Hindu clergy to Democratic Party events and to represent Hindu thought. And I have to say that I have only received warm welcome. Everybody wants to learn more of who we are. So onus is truly on us. And I think we must invest in our next generation and say this, yes, science and art, science is really good, and medicine and engineering is really good. But there are kids who would do well going into journalism or
So
politics.
speaking of which, Falguni, let me bring in Rutvij Hole. Rutvij is a freshman at Stanford, and he has been doing. He has his own political action committee. He has been active in politics now for at least 3 years that I know of, maybe longer. And he, he was supposed to join, and he joined a while ago, but I didn't quite see him join. He was not there at the very beginning. He missed that part, but Rutvij, thank you for joining.
No problem.
Rutvij, is very articulate, talks about Hindu issues with a lot of passion, and a great organizer. He, in fact, recently organized some student protest at Stanford University. Prior to that, he has talked to people, elected officials, and all of that. So, Rutvij, I want to actually, first you were going to be on the panel, but now my as asking questions, right? But let me just ask you a question, because now we have reached the stage where we can, where we, going towards the end of the program. So let me just ask your perspective of having both of these are second generation, as if you were to count generation. The first generation are people who come as immigrants to India, and these are both second generation Hindus who have risen to prominence in their own political party. As a second generation Hindu yourself, how do you see that?
I mean, it makes sense, right? The first generation that came for any immigrant group always kind of focuses on, in a sense, anchoring the boat, right? Getting themselves settled, getting in economically, having a house, building some level of established network, and keeping their heads down, right? It's very common in all kind of immigrant communities. And after that, you do see the second generation branch out a bit, right? And so, like all other immigrant communities now, Indian Americans here are taking up everything from politics to journalism to business to tech. Every single field you have, Indian Americans are becoming very prominent, right? And this is no exception.
So,
That,
oh, go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry, finish your thought.
That being said, what I care about more personally, rather than seeing what there's some Indian American name on a ballot, is knowing whether they actually care about the issues that Indian Americans, and for that matter, Hindu Americans face. Right. So, for example, Vivek Ramaswamy during his presidential run, he would go to mandirs. He'd meet with us. He'd understand our issues. He'd had a dedicated person on his team to talk with Hindu Americans and to make sure that Hindu American issues were being addressed. What I want to see from Kamala Harris, I mean, I'm happy her mother's Indian. That's really great. And for that matter, I say is, a very proud Republican, someone who works deeply with the RNC myself. I'm very happy that JD Vance's wife is Indian American too. That's great. But what I want to see from both of them is that Indian American heritage comes with an understanding of the issue that we face and a commitment to be able to solve them. Unless they have that, then the Indian American name, for me at least, means absolutely
So,
nothing.
so Rutuj, your question was slightly different. So let me
Okay.
pivot back. It's not about Indian Americans. It's not about Hindu. It's not about Indian Americans at all. My question was more as a second generation Hindu, how do you see the achievement of second generation Hindu in the field of electoral politics? And is there a lesson that you learn from that and other second generation youth who are growing up in America? Are there any lessons they can draw from that? So today we are not talking about issues and we are not talking about candidates from the issue perspective. We are not talking about Indian American heritage either. We're talking about the Hindu heritage. Um, does that how does that uh, you know interplay with the electoral politics of these candidates, and is there an inspiration that second generation you draw from that? Or in case of, I'll give you an example. For example, when Bobby Jindal ran for
Yeah.
elections, a lot of newspapers media contacted me and said, what do you think about Bobby Jindal running, or Bobby Jindal getting elected as the governor? And I said, look, I mean, as a fellow Indian American, and there I did specifically use Indian American, I feel I feel very happy for him. At the same time, as a Hindu, I'm not sure. I'm sure, actually. I said I'm sure. I didn't say I'm not sure. I said, as a Hindu, I do not consider him to be a role model because he brought. He said that in order, well, he didn't quite say it openly, but he implied that in order to win the election, he had to convert, right? So from the Hindu American perspective, even if he brings up all the Hindu issues, that is not a great role model, because that tells the youth that in order to achieve something in politics, a Hindu youth, that in order to achieve something in politics, you must become a a Christian. Now, none of both of his parents are not Christian, so it's not the same as in some ways some of the other candidates who are running, whether at least one parent is a Christian or whatever, right? But in this case, it's he converted so that he can win elections in middle school or high school rather. So my question to you was, from the second generation Hindu perspective, let's not worry about issues,
Fair.
just the candidature.
Mm, that makes sense. So I think this goes back, to go back to the Mahabharata. It very much goes back to that in the sense that, you can really find a role model in anyone, right? There's good things in anyone. What's the old story, right? About Krishna asking Duryodhan and Arjun to give a prize to the person who they felt was most deserving. Duryodhan said, no one's deserving here. And Arjun said, everyone's so great, how can I choose, right? So similarly, from all of these people, right? Whether it be people like Neera Tandon, Urok Khanna on the Democratic side, whether it be people like Vivek Ramaswamy, Neeraj Antani on the Republican side, whether it be, many of you guys who have all achieved, many things in politics, whether it even be someone like me who maybe hasn't achieved all that much, but certainly has risen to a level that a lot of Indian Americans didn't think was possible for us. There is certainly a lesson here that there is a space for us in the political world, right? I mean, one of the things I feel that Indian Americans have and Hindu Americans have is a very self-defeating attitude of, oh, you're going to go outside being a Hindu, you're going to go outside wearing a tilak, you're going to go outside doing this, doing that. What will public society think of you? And you have people that say they're proud Hindus, right? Like Vivek Ramaswamy, like, for that matter, Rokhanna even says he's a proud Gandhian Hindu, and they're able to get elected. So what that tells me is that, fine, leaving issues aside here, as second generation Indian Americans, the apprehension that we may have in our heads about, oh, I have to make a choice between being successful in not only politics, but in any career, or keeping my Hindu identity, it's a false dichotomy that, to be quite frank, aside from again some of the fringe people on the left and some of the fringe people on the right, has not been opposed on us by anyone but ourselves. We've been trained, perhaps because of the way that we've thought, colonially, because we've had centuries of colonial subjugation, that we need to repress our Hindu identity in order to get ahead. When what these Indian Americans show, who, whether they proudly say it or not, are going to be perceived in the minds of many non-Indians as Hindus. What these Indian Americans show is that you can very proudly be Hindu and you can be successful in the career at the same time. And so, yes, of course, there's lessons, that we should be avoiding from them, right? Like in the sense of, we shouldn't be telling our kids, okay, to become governor, you need to convert to Christianity. But we should definitely point it out that, look, a lot of these people went to their mothers. A lot of these people kept their Hindu name. A lot of these people kept their Hindu identity. And yet they were still able to see such high levels of success. And so you, right, XYZ, should not feel that you need to abandon your identity in order to achieve the same level of success. And as Hindus become a bigger minority here, as Hindus become more embedded into a culture here, we're going to see this pattern increase more, not less. It's not going to go back to the days of Bobby Jindal. That was a time when Hindus were a very small minority. Now we're reaching to a point where it's going to become mainstream. I'm very hopeful that at some point being Hindu is going to be a very normalized part of American
Yeah.
politics.
Oh, it's just the sad commentary is that there are two Congress people right now who have Hindu names but are Christians. So
JJ, if I may, can I comment for 30 seconds
yes,
on
I was
this?
going to go around and please start because I want the same question to be answered by everyone on this panel.
I feel, along with what Ruthvi said, I think we came a long way, right, from Babel Jindal's days. Just looking at Vivek Ramaswamy makes me proud. I know there are some Democrats, Indian Americans or Hindu Americans, they say that they cringe when Vivek Ramaswamy speaks, whereas I feel the pride. But I think the kudos need to be given to people like you and the PACs and a lot of people that have put themselves out there in the last 30, 40, 50 years to speak about Hinduism, right? So I think we should never neglect to remember all those people along building their professionals, building their entrepreneurship, put their time, talent, and treasure out there in the mainstream America, trying to merge the values of Americans and telling mainstream Americans, informing them that, like Vivek Ramaswamy, he's always on his platform, never saying that he's not a Hindu American, but really emphasizes the fact that how much of Hindu values are aligned with Christian values too. For that matter, Sanatan Dharma values are humanistic values. How could they not be aligned, right? So I want to end by giving kudos to all those PACs like yours and Sudaji and so on and so forth. All those legendary figures. In fact, we have Santaji, Neeraj Antani. Sometimes I feel like Santaji, Mr. Gupta, that's here, VHP's role, have put Neeraj Antani where he is, right? So we got to give kudos to them, but we also have to give kudos to Americans for kind of starting to accept us. And I have no doubt that this is only going to be good thing for our generations to come. I'm very optimistic about that.
Thank you, Lakshmiji. On so this is the this is an important question for our community. What do you think?
Well, I guess I would call myself a 1.5 generation Indian because I came here when I was 4. And I grew up here in the United States. And I remember, when I first came here, I could barely speak English, despite my grandfather doing his best to teach me, but he taught me British English. And when I came here, my mother would pack me idlis for lunch, and I would not know how to explain what those were. I would be eating it underneath the table. This is something that a lot of people who grew up here, who came in with their parents or who were born here and went through. We don't have to do that anymore. because people know a little bit more about our culture, about our food. They know more about these things. But I never had to change my name. I never, despite the fact that my parents sent me to Catholic schools for most of my uh, primary and secondary education. My teachers are like, why didn't you just call yourself Mary? I wish I had the ability to stand. I was just looking at her, the teacher who asked me this. I was like, well, my name is Lakshmi. I was named after my grandmothers, my aunts, and also, the goddess in our religion. And I was able to sit there and explain that to her. And I think that, that is something that you get from, your home life and your parents and everything, the values that they instill in you. And I think that that is something that our children, that are growing up now, the second and third generations that are out there now, are very confident in doing because they have that comfort level. And frankly, the society, we have changed the society in such a way that they know more about our culture, that they are more accepting, that they're willing to learn to pronounce our names, to learn about us. I was very happy, when I met Padma Gupta when she was running for her first term in Michigan, because she was actually a proud Hindu who was talking about India, about Hindu issues, about, to the community, about the community. She was being an ambassador, bringing everybody together. And we have a lot more people doing that now. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. I think the second and third generation really appreciate that. Because it's not, we are Indian, we are Hindu, and we are American, and all of these identities mesh together very, very well. These are
Very
not,
well said.
you don't have to choose anymore. Is
Yeah,
I think my point, and I think that's an amazing point that we're at right now. And when it came to Vivek Ramaswamy, I disagree with a lot of the stuff that he actually says, but I was super proud that he was like, "I am a Hindu." I'm super proud when Padmaji says, "I am a Hindu." When and Jennifer Rajkumar and all these other people,
and Rishi
yeah,
Sunak. I mean, Rishi Sunak is a great example of a head of a state of a Christian country,
wasn't that
officially a
amazing?
Christian country, and he would say, he did more to make his faith visible
Mhm.
than most other politicians do, even in India.
Yeah,
So,
that was
so
utterly amazing. I think it was, the fact that there's so many wonderful images that were released, the videos, the photos, and everything of a proud Hindu, you know, celebrating in the way that a Hindu does something like that. I think that was incredibly amazing, and I hope
absolutely,
more people do that.
yeah. Uh, Falguni Ben?
Yeah, very, very good question. I think the days of having to change your religion in order to get ahead are way past. Uh, for Hindus, that's not happening. For anybody else, I don't think they even would consider it. I think we have always adjusted ourselves in the past. But I think now that we are comfortable asserting ourselves as who we are, because I think we are also recognizing that our values are human values, our values are all inclusive. And if you look at what Usha Vance has done, is she supported her husband in embracing Christianity even more while her retaining her Hindu heritage, because we know how to balance that. I have seen Vivek Ramaswamy, as everybody else say, talk about being Hindu, yet supporting Judeo-Christian values and drawing similarities. And how we all are. We say there's a God within us, while Christians say we all are created in image of God. So how we reconcile? We know how to do that. So there is, and I think there is a new sense of uh, appreciation for our values and the knowledge of our values that is emerging in the second generation, is not who has not been raised in India. And that is a lot to say. I think that is a lot to say across the globe, how the Hindu values are coming to surface and making us proud that we are Hindus. That means we are reflected in everything else. Now, in 1893, the first time Hinduism came to the West was through Swami Vivekananda. He brought Hinduism to the West, and somebody asked him, "How do I become a Hindu? How do I convert?" And he said, "What do you practice?" And he said, "I'm a Christian." And he said, Vivekananda ji said, "Be the best Christian that you could be." And that's then you would be a Hindu, or you would be following the Hindu principles. So I think because we are so inclusive and we are understanding that we are so inclusive and we see ourselves in others, I think we are very comfortable with that inclusivity within ourselves. And I think the new generation is very proud.
And Sudha, your thoughts, and then maybe you can conclude by giving some final remarks and vote of thanks.
I have to say, I'm more and more impressed with our second and third generation. I mean, and kudos to their parents, I have to say, because we are seeing more and more of our young people coming out to stand as Hindu Americans and to represent us in the larger community, be out there as visible members of community, whether they are IT engineers or doctors stepping out of it and coming to introduce themselves to all government officials, elected officials, because now we know we have a stake in the game, right? In America, as Americans. Very, very nice to see. I had a boss one time, a Caucasian man, a couple of decades ago, who said, "You guys just wait. 2 decades later, you'll be just like us." I don't know what he meant, but we are just like everybody else. But we also are very strongly rooted in our dharma, Sanatana Dharma, the eternal truth, right? So we carry that through. So I'm very proud to see the young people stand up. We have a lot more. I agree with all the ladies. Lot more work to do introducing ourselves to our community. Most people don't know who a Hindu is. People ask me, "What's a Jain? What do you mean?" Right? We have to introduce ourselves to the larger community, law enforcement, our elected officials, and give them reasons to stand with us, right? We are not doing that enough. So I'm very happy to see Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket, very happy to see Usha Vance as a VP, very happy to see Nikki Haley having run in the race, Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm hoping they all of these people will find a very good role in whatever the government is going to happen, after elections, because they have a lot to contribute to the well-being of the whole country. That's what we do. We bring esteem to any country we live in the diaspora. So kudos to all of you. Kudos to the Hindu Americans out there. And I agree with whoever said, don't be out of the game, stay in the game. Go vote. Yeah.
So that's so well put. So now let me just share this final thing with you. So we have an initiative called Hindu Vote. It's been very popular for last couple of election cycles. You can see that we take up a lot of electoral issues. It's a voter education voter education initiative. The website is hinduvote.org, and we talk about, and we have all kinds of tools that one would need, including why the American Hindu vote matters. There's a questionnaire for all the candidates for federal offices. So, for example, for House of Representatives and Senate and presidential elections, how do you engage with your legislators? Why Hindu vote matters? And we are going to, in next week. So by next week, we're going to roll out a brand new version of this website with a lot of tools for Hindu voters in America. So we can see there every behind every click here there are a lot of tools and all that. I don't want to spend time today going to all this, but you can see that we have done quite a bit of voter education activities through the last 4 years that we have been around, including holding the feet to fire for all the elected officials, and we don't talk about just the Hindu issues. We talk about Hindu issues and non-Hindu issues that impact all Americans, and we do a lot of candidate awareness programs as well, not just the Hindu voter awareness, but also the lawmaker and the candidate awareness. So there's a huge amount of work. There's for every election. You can There are about 1,400 federal candidates for federal offices, and we have a web page for every single one of those candidates, and you can evaluate the candidate from the Hindu perspective. So in the next one of the future shows, we can talk about that. But I also want to take off from where Sudha left off. I want to thank all of you for joining. It's been really educational. I know that at the last minute you guys all came and spent so much time with us. I'm really, really grateful for that. So thank you for joining. Once again, this is Hindu Lounge, brought to you by Hindu Pact, an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Thank you for joining, everyone. Namaste.